Welcome once again to our continuing YouTube video series on shareholders agreements as it relates to business law. My name is Christopher Neufeld of Neufeld Legal, and in this particular YouTube video we will be discussing the importance of not waiting, not procrastinating when it comes to drafting and signing off on a unanimous shareholders agreement. Now, why is it so very important to draft your unanimous shareholders agreement at the commencement of partnering with your fellow shareholders, as opposed to waiting until the business is rolling and you're getting a bit more money in so that you can justify going to a lawyer and putting together a unanimous shareholders agreement? Well, there's one thing that you really need to remember, and this comes from over 20 years of legal experience, is the fact that when you wait to sign a unanimous shareholders agreement or to start discussing it with your fellow business partners, really shareholders, you are walking into the trap of never getting it signed or never getting it negotiated on terms that are acceptable to yourself, especially where you are the principal driver of the business. And why do I say that? I say that because at the outset, if you are taking the initiative on getting the shareholders agreement done and you make it a cornerstone of moving the business forward, it can get signed before you move forward. People have the interest, have the desire to get something like that signed. They want to get the business moving forward. They will get it signed. They will commit to it, especially where you make it a point that you will not move forward with the business unless this critical agreement is signed off. Now, what happens when you say, well, we don't want to engage a lawyer, we don't want to get into serious discussions about a unanimous shareholders agreement until we see where the business is going, until we know that the business is going to be successful and profitable? Well, you can wait a bit, but I caution you against that. Why? Because you start to get busy. You start to get into a system and into a cycle. And then the business starts to get profitable. Now, what happens? What happens is that you'll find out that there'll be some shareholders who aren't pulling their weight with respect to the business, and other shareholders, which my focus being on hopefully yourself, we're pulling the weight, will not want to get to reduce their rights with respect to the company. When there is no shareholders agreement, their commitment, their return is the same as yours. However, once the shareholders agreement's in place, there are controls, there are obligations, there's expectations of them that they are not going to be willing to give up, because they're going to look at it and say, whoa, wait a minute. You want me to give up all this stuff? I'm an equal partner in this business, and you want me to come back and give up this stuff? They say that because they already realize that they are not contributing as much to the business as yourself. And that's a very difficult situation to be in. They are not performing, they're not committing, they're not working as hard, and it becomes a take scenario as opposed to any give and take. There has to be give and take, but there's not going to be give and take once the business is rolling, once the profits are coming in, and they're expected to give up stuff. Instead, they will just want to take. So you're not going to have a shareholders agreement, or at least not the one that you want, if you wait a year, 2 years, 3 years, and once the business is rolling and they're not performing. What you'll have is some partial shareholders agreement. It'll still be called a shareholders agreement, but it won't be a driver. It'll be a legal document, but it won't be a powerful driver for the business to help it move on to its next stages, its next levels, to continue to force performance, to deal with problems as they really need to be dealt with. Instead, you'll have a bland document that will address some of the aspects, and there's a potential that some shareholders might sign off on it because it just makes sense to move forward. Or you bring another shareholder in, and that shareholder demands it. But you're not getting what you really should be wanting from the outset. Instead, you have to think about this. Get your shareholders agreement done as early as possible. Do not procrastinate. That way you can introduce elements into the shareholders agreement that benefit everyone, that increase performance, that allow for proper buyouts where there either is non-performance or there are problems with respect to the business, that you can divide the business appropriately, that you can deal with issues in the business accordingly. Do you want to be going forward, putting in all that time, work, and money into a business and find out 5 years from now that there is little control that you have over the business because you decided not to have a shareholders agreement in place? That is what you are conferring by not having a unanimous shareholders agreement put in place at the outset. It's an important document. It is, from a lawyer's perspective, one of the most important documents for any business. Because without it, or with an inadequate unanimous shareholders agreement, you're going to have disputes that cannot be settled effectively. You're going to be having businesses that are incapable of performing at the levels they need to be performing at. Or people who are going to be working harder than others and feeling that they're getting grossly underpaid for the relative amount of work they're doing. So you got to think about that. Do you want to be in that kind of situation? Do you want to have the problems arise 5 years from now, 7 years from now, when you've worked hard, and some of your fellow shareholders might also have worked hard, but others have not, and you find yourself having what should be a great business and could be an even greater business and not have the tools to keep it moving forward or to dealing with internal problems? It's a bad scenario to find yourself in. So you really need to consider, should I have a unanimous shareholders agreement now? Can I push it through at the inception of the business? Because if you make the effort and get it pushed through as a criteria of your moving forward with the business, you'll be so much better served, especially if the business grows as you intend it to grow, or even grows half the way you intend it to grow, and you're with it for 5 years, for 10 years. Then you'll be saying, thank goodness I had a shareholders agreement in place from the inception, because I was able to get maximum performance out of everybody who's involved. And hopefully, you don't ever need it. It just drives people because they know what the expectations are. They know what the repercussions and the penalties are for non-performance or for disputes not being appropriately settled in a timely fashion. And that is why it is strongly, strongly recommended that you get a unanimous shareholders agreement that's complete and thorough at the inception of the business, when the corporation is created and these shareholders are being brought in, as opposed to waiting and procrastinating. Because by waiting and procrastinating, it is very doubtful that you will get a shareholders agreement in the future if there is a disproportionate level of work. And if there is a shareholders agreement, it'll be so weakened down that it will not be worth the paper it is written on. That might be a bit of an exaggeration, but there is a great potential that it will not have the ability to do what you would have hoped for had you had the shareholders agreement in place from the inception and pushed it through, and it was equitable and it was fair, but it had good expectations. These are really my recommendations, just based on experience and seeing what has happened when people do not do this. We hope you find this YouTube video informative and you like it, you subscribe to our channel, provide us with your comments, and look for more YouTube videos that we will be presenting on shareholders agreement and on other aspects of business law. Thank you.